This time on Between the Wheels.
It's unique for me because it was my first car. I bought it just before I turned 19. I had it ever since. I'd look down and I'd be sitting like at 130, 140, and I wouldn't even realize.
Really? This is a luxury vehicle. This is an old man car, no offense.
Oh no, I've heard it lots. I've heard it lots. And the smoker's convenience package with the ashtray and the lighter. There's even ashtrays in the back seats still too. You can put your foot right down.
Right.
And those Cadillac gears they'll just send you flying.
They're 6 years old. Wow. So this week on Between the Wheels, we're on the road again. We're heading to Renfrew, Ontario, Canada. Check out a 2002 Cadillac Eldorado. This belongs to a very good friend of mine, Nick. Haven't seen him in many years. I'm really excited for this episode. You know, I love these road trips, especially this time of year. You know, it's autumn, the leaves are changing. You get some really unique weather patterns. It just looks awesome. So we're gonna put some tunes on, some Rush, some Subdivisions, some Canadian progressive rock. We're gonna check out Renfrew. All right, Nick, it's good to see you again, man. It's been a long time.
No kidding.
Nice place you got here.
Yeah, it's not bad. Hey?
Yeah.
Small town vibes.
That's right. Nick used to live in town with near me, and now you moved out here to the country. And what an upgrade! I got to tell you, this looks awesome.
Yeah, I don't regret it for a second.
No. Now, before we talk about this car, we actually have a really funny story on how we met, and another car that used to have a very unique vehicle and has a hell of a story behind it. I thought we'd share that before we get into the Eldorado. So back in 2016, I was filming an independent movie. So I was looking to do this film, and I needed to find a police interceptor. And lo and behold, I'm driving down the street near this gas bar, the Canadian Tire gas bar, and I see this mint-looking black and white standing on a Crown Vic. And I remember seeing it, I was like, wow, like this car's perfect. It's so cool. And then I literally spent the next 2 months trying to get the courage to go over there and bug you and talk to you about it.
2 months? I didn't know it was that long. I thought you did it day of.
No, I wanted to go there. I'm like, oh, don't be crazy. And eventually I just went in and I met you, and it turns out you actually took the same program in school that I did in television broadcasting.
Yes, I did.
So we're of the same background, and we ended up using that car for the movie. The movie was entitled Respawn. It was a psychological thriller. It was a really fun movie to film, and the car just looked perfect for the roles.
Are you the homeowner?
No, I live over there. Blue fucking house. I'm the one that called you, remember?
With open liquor?
Saturday, man.
That's pretty cool that you had that car, man.
Yeah, it worked out great. I mean, I had a great time helping you film that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we met, and unfortunately you don't have that car anymore.
No, I miss that car quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of pushed into selling it, but that's a whole other story we don't have to get into.
No.
But I mean, you know, everything happens for a reason. So.
Right, yeah. We won't get into that story, but you let your imagination kind of figure out, you know, police interceptors. Some people might not like them.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get into it too much, but it was a really nice car, and that was cool to
Yeah,
have.
it was great. It was a great winter car for me, and had it for about a year and a half. That was a lot of fun.
So the Crown Vic was really cool, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about your Eldorado. Tell me about this car.
Yeah, so this is a 2002 Eldorado ETC, Eldorado Touring Coupe. It was the last year that they made the Eldorado. It's unique for me because it was my first car. I bought it just before I turned 19 and had it ever since.
So why the Eldorado? Of all the vehicles you could have, you didn't start off with, you know, like a shitty Honda Civic or something rusted out. You end up going with this.
So many people growing up, they always said, "Oh, your first car is gonna be a beater," or like your first car is gonna be this and that. And I don't know. I searched a long time, and my dad and I actually came across this car. When we found it, it was in amazing shape. It had never seen the snow. It belonged to, still with the first owner, it belonged to a snowbird. It had been shipped to Florida every winter. So
Really?
it was in phenomenal shape. So I said, you know, why not?
It's still in phenomenal shape. You know, this is a 20-year-old car at this point, right?
Yep, 20 years.
And it looks pretty mint. So did you ever use it in the winter at all?
Never once. The only I say it's never seen snow. It technically has once.
Okay.
We got a snowfall in, I think it was late October one year.
Right.
And it had maybe like a skiffle of snow on it, and that's
But
it.
it's never seen the salt.
Never seen the salt.
In Canada, it's not so much about the snow, it's about the salt. The salt really accelerates the rusting process, and they use a lot of that stuff here, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, it destroys a lot of good vehicles.
right. So this is what happens when you don't see the salt. That's wonderful, and the car looks great, and you've maintained it very well.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of horsepower, torque, what are we talking about? How many cylinders is this engine?
This has a 4.6 liter V8.
It's a V8.
32 valve Northstar.
Okay.
It's front wheel drive as well. So it's got a transverse V8. And
What would that mean to people that?
transverse, so it's actually sideways
Okay.
compared to like your standard V8s, like where you've got your cylinders running this way. It's actually sideways,
Interesting.
which makes it very tricky to work on. I know a lot of mechanics don't like working on them because there's not a lot of room and it's kind of a pain.
Right.
And I think it's originally stock. They were rated at 300 horsepower for the ETC model.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just around 300 horsepower. It's a V8. Do you know how much torque they have, more or less?
Off the top of my head, I don't
No.
remember the torque specs.
So now that you've had the car for 20 years, do you have anything in terms of performance that you want to tell us about?
Obviously, you know, it's a bigger, heavier car, so off the line, it's nothing incredible.
Right.
But when you get up to about that like 45, 50 kilometer an hour mark, and it really hits second gear, that's when you can really feel the pull of the V8. And
Okay.
like, it'll really, really take off. The 0 to 40 is nothing special, but from about 45 to 100,
Okay.
it's pretty fun.
Now, in terms of V8, a lot of people, when they associate V8, they think muscle car as in a lot of power and a lot of noise, but this is not that case at all. Like, this is a luxury vehicle. This is an old man car, no offense.
Oh no, I've heard it lots. I've heard it lots, and I've gotten used to that.
This is luxury, it's meant to be quiet, so you don't really feel, I guess, the rawness of the vehicle. It's not meant to be like that.
No,
It's meant to be.
like rumbly shaking of like a muscle car or like
Right.
a V8 or anything. But you definitely notice the power when you do put your foot down on the highway or if you want to pass.
Right. So now, when I was thinking about this vehicle, first of all, I don't see many of them around. Like, you almost never see them. They're pretty rare at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've only come across maybe a handful since I've owned this car. And, you know, there's always the saying like, oh, once you buy one, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I can say that's almost not true with this. I could probably count on one hand the amount of Eldorados I've seen since I've bought this car.
Oh, so it's not like Grand Theft Auto where you
No.
find a rare car and they just spawn everywhere?
No, not even close.
All right, so tell me some of the features about this car.
Well, I mean, it's a Cadillac, so it's got lots of bells and whistles. Starting in the interior, you know, it's got heated seats, power seats, the Bose sound system.
Right.
It has a neat valet feature, so you can actually lock out the car, and it'll only go up to, you know, like a minimum speed, and it'll lock out the trunk and everything
Really?
with 2 sets of keys. Yeah, it's actually neat, and it's actually in the glove box beside the traction control button. So it's kind of neat, like you flip open the glove box and you've got these switches inside.
Really?
For valet mode and the traction control, which is, I don't know, kind of a different thing. I hadn't seen that before
Pretty
in a
unique.
vehicle.
Wow.
Other than that, it does have the sunroof, tilt, and the full sunroof.
Nice.
It's got the original chrome wheels on it.
Nice.
So that's when I bought the car, actually the only thing it needed for safety was the tires. And as a gift, my father paid for these same tires actually.
Oh, so they're
So
still on.
yeah, so they'd be 7 years old. But I mean, I've only put
Wow.
34,000 kilometers on the car. So
Right.
probably only halfway through that set of tires, so.
Okay. Now, ultimate question, because a lot of these cars that I do in the show, sometimes people have had these cars as much as 30, 40 years. Would you ever sell this?
No. I've come
Why?
close. The amount of people that I've talked to, especially old timers and stuff like that, or just different people that always say, you know, I had such and such, or I had this and that for my first car, and I regret selling it. I should have never sold it. I miss that car so much. I'd do anything to buy that car back. I've heard it so many times that, you know, a few years ago, there was times I considered selling it. You know, I didn't have the space to keep it, or things
Yeah.
kept breaking on it, and or
Be nice to
I
have the
wasn't
money.
using, or even that. Like, I guess, yeah, maybe just nice to have a few extra $1,000 because they're not really worth that much at this time.
Right.
Maybe eventually.
Yeah.
But the amount of people that I've heard say they regret selling their first car, I'm finally past that. I have a place to store it, you know, and it's I can take it or leave it as I want.
Yeah.
I'll never sell it now because I don't want to be.
You got a bug on you.
Oh,
We're in the country.
Yeah, there's bugs everywhere.
You don't want to exactly.
But
no,
I don't want to ever live with that regret of selling it, right?
Right.
Because it's a lot harder to replace something once you've given it up.
Yeah. Well, my wife's dad used to have a 72 Charger, which he had to sell.
So my father also had a 72 Charger.
How do you think he feels now, knowing that he sold this car that's worth over $100,000?
Yeah,
now, actually,
depending on the Charger.
Actually, technically, it wasn't his first car, but it was his first car he bought.
If it was all original, yeah, that would be
Right.
worth a lot now.
So there's always the emotional connection. Obviously, there's the memories, and then obviously, if you have these long enough, they start becoming rare, and then it's worth something, not just in a money sense, but it's like. People will ask you a question, well, what is that? It looks unique, whatnot. It's a topic of conversation, but
It definitely is.
right. So this is pretty cool. You know what? I think what we've got to do is we got to take her for a rip.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll
Let's
take
see
it for a little ride.
Yeah, see how she does. All right, let's take this thing for a burn. Just kidding. It's not really what this car is made for.
No, I used to give it the beans once in a while, but maybe as I've gotten older and wiser, part of me just doesn't want things to break.
I hear you. No, it's you got to drive a little more conservatively than, you know.
Unless you're willing to put out the money to fix things, right?
Right.
And I'm trying to keep this as low cost as I can for now.
Right. How is it in terms of repairs? Like if something breaks down, like, or have you not had enough really breakdowns?
I have replaced a lot of things in this car over the years. Now, was it due to it just being older and it was time, or was it because I used to drive it pretty hard?
Like an idiot?
Yeah. I mean, as a 19 and 20-year-old would, right? I think it's a little bit of both. I've replaced radiators, one radiator, pulleys, belts, alternator, fuel pumps, water pump.
That's actually a lot, and you've only driven this thing, what?
Things.
You've only
35,000 kilometers we're coming up on.
Over 7 years, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, the first 2 years I had it, I drove it to school. I mean, it was the only car I had, so I drove it every day to work and whatnot. Now I probably average more like 500 to 800 kilometers a year.
Right.
A lot better.
Now, in terms of ride quality, so we're going over some rough-ass roads. Like, back there it was pretty rough. It looked like an alley. I didn't feel anything. We're just bouncing around here. Like, this thing's pretty comfy.
Yeah, it's got air ride suspension, right? So people always say it's
Really?
like driving a couch down the road.
That's what it feels like. It's, first of all, it's huge in terms of, like, well, it's a four-seater, it's a two-door, but it still feels giant.
Technically five.
Technically five, yeah. I guess so.
Five-seater, but yeah, it's not very fun for the fifth person.
No, it's really comfortable. Yeah, a lot of these cars I get to drive are comfy old cars. The newer cars, you just don't get that couch feeling.
No, not anymore.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. It's funny because 2002 doesn't sound like it's that long ago, but it is, because I see tape deck first of all, and you got the auxiliary, which is perfect.
The smoker's convenience package with the ashtray and the lighter and
Love
stuff.
it.
Yeah,
Pretty
I think there's even ashtrays in the back seats still too.
It's hilarious. They just had ashtrays ever back in the day, eh?
Almost as many ashtrays as cup holders.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I've even seen them in the trunk. Like, what, you're taking a smoke break for those 2 seconds? Like, I need another ashtray.
That's something else.
That's hilarious. Well, that's cool. And you got leather interior, obviously, here. It's everything nothing looks cheap in here. Like, obviously it's out of date, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, dated but not cheap.
For the time being, this would be pretty luxurious.
Oh yeah, top of the line.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, got the heated seats too.
Yeah.
Which I always used to make the joke, like, it's my summer car.
Right.
Right? I've heated seats in my summer car, but I don't have heated seats in my winter car. Right?
That's right.
Kind of unfortunate.
It's got some nice pull to it.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I'll close this so that we don't get too much wind.
Yeah, but you see that? Like, he closed it and it got really quiet in here. I don't know how much the microphones pick it up. A lot of the older cars, you close the windows, it makes no difference at all.
Not at all. You still get the whistles and rattles.
Yeah, so this is a completely different ride from what we're used to on the show. We usually ride a lot of crazy, fast, loud cars. This is totally the opposite. It's still fast. It's just much more comfortable.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, like, it's not crazy off the line, you know, it'll never pull your head back.
Right.
But when you're on the highway or on like a 2-lane road like this and you want to go out and pass someone, you put your foot right down.
Right.
And those Cadillac gears they'll just send you flying.
So, speaking of that, how is it on gas being a V8?
If you drive it nice, like I do now most of the time, it's not bad.
Really?
Like we can see what are we pulling right now.
Oh, it shows you, okay.
I'm averaging 13 and a half out of 100.
Right.
Like that's my average.
You know, I would have thought it's much worse because it's a V8, but because it's a bigger engine, is it actually more efficient than having a small engine that you're pushing a lot harder? Do you?
I don't know. I mean, you could be.
Interesting. Well, that's pretty cool. It's got some little bit of digital stuff on here. Still a lot of old school gauges and whatnot, but it's pretty simple in here. There's nothing too crazy. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not a luxury car guy, but I had a luxury car. I had the X5 for a while. Yeah. And it was a great car to drive. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, you don't need the luxury car." You don't. But if you drive long distance, it's nice to have.
That's like a lot of people say, what does it matter? A car gets you to A and B. It's like, well, if your A and B is very far, or you go to your A and B very often, like if you're in a car, 2 hours a day with your commute, it is going to be important to have some of those features, right?
And there's the biggest difference I find between the base cars and luxury cars is soundproofing. Mm-hmm. And why that matters is, let's say you're driving a muscle car a short distance and you're ripping it, you want it loud, you want to hear all that stuff.
You want to hear it, yeah.
But when you're going long distance, you got to drive at least an hour one way every day. You don't really want all that wind noise all the time. You just want to put your tunes on and relax, you know what I mean?
Wind noise and engine noise, right?
Exactly, so it can get actually quite annoying if it's your daily driver. So yeah, I like having that luxury aspect nice. Like the Bronco's nice, but it is a wind noise monster. I cannot wait to get the hard top.
Yeah, that soft top is always brutal.
It is it's crazy loud. So not a big fan of that, and it does get annoying, but it is what it is.
I know a lot of the thing too though with comes a lot of features. Yeah. A lot of things can break, right? For every feature you have, that's another computer that can fail, or another fuse that can go, or wiring that can go. Right. And like early 2000s or GM products are known, right? They always say that electrical gremlins, right? Any feature you have at some point in time is not going to work for anyone. And
the thing is, replacing these features, like when they have some of these features, they could be so much more expensive to fix than you imagine. I'll give you an example. On the 2013 BMW X5, it had like the electronic trunk, and this thing looked like a monster, like huge hydraulics and whatnot, and it was so elaborate. Like you open and close it a couple of times, your battery's dead. Yeah, that's how much it drew. Really? I'm like, man, if this thing breaks, it's gonna cost me an arm and a leg, and it did cost me an arm and a leg for everything else. Thankfully, that never broke. But so I know what you mean. And but you get to a car where they're in the early 2000s, it's hard to find parts to replace, and then it becomes almost impossible to keep them alive.
I know for a lot of the interior parts in this vehicle, I'm not 100% on everything, but I know a lot of them I can use parts out of Monte Carlos. Okay. Like I had to replace the window motors and stuff in this door. Oh, cool. And we just took one out of a Monte Carlo, and it was the exact same. So in that sense, pull stuff from other GM vehicles, but
But some other cars, like it depends on the part too.
Depends on the car, yeah. Depends on what you need.
Like for example, some of the cars I've shot have flip up lights. And anybody who has the flip up lights, nobody's putting those up for even for the show, because they're like, if those break, I'm screwed. Things you don't think about. So
here, I'll do a little pull here from about 50. Yeah.
Nice. She goes.
Not bad. She goes. Now I did it a little higher than usual, so I was already in third gear, and for some reason it didn't downshift, but...
I think you went so fast that this guy pulled over, just...
One thing, notice with this car, you got to use your cruise control, if you're on a long drive and whatnot, is the throttle's really sensitive. Like we're cruising along here at about 90, and I'm probably only pushing the throttle down maybe half an inch. Okay. That's it. So if your foot gets tired on a long drive, like many times, especially when I was driving back and forth every day to school, I'd look down and I'd be sitting like at 130, 140, and I wouldn't even realize.
Really?
I'd be just flying.
Yeah. And you would never know because it's so quiet in here too. So
quiet, smooth. It's a highway car. They always said Cadillacs are king of the road, and least king of the highway.
I can see why all the old guys like them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and in the glove box, you've got your valet mode and your traction control button. Right. So for the valet mode, it comes, old school, still 2 keys on this. So I have a door key and an ignition key. Okay. So the way it works is you put valet mode on, you close the glove box, then you can lock it, and you only give them the ignition key. So they can only start the car and unlock the driver's door. And I think it limits the speed as well, but I've never actually tried it.
It's like a national treasure. Like, you got to do it in this sequence to
Yeah,
open up the pyramids.
pretty much, yeah.
Otherwise, you'll get killed by the big rocks. That's hilarious. No, this is pretty cool, man. Well, you know, every car is just a little bit different. That's why we like doing these episodes, because you just never know what you're going to learn. Like all these wild features. I would have never imagined that, but it's pretty cool. Now, it's covered, but you actually have a custom license plate on this car.
Yes, I do. They were my grandfather's plates, actually. So my last name and my first initial are the same as his.
Right.
So his plates ended up working on this car. So there's another reason to be kind of sentimental. Now I could put those plates on any car, but...
Right, but you know, to have it onto this particular car. So.
Yeah, my grandfather was definitely into the luxury cars. He always had like Lincolns and high-end Buicks and stuff. So
Okay.
I think it's kind of fitting to have those plates on the Cadillac.
Nice.
So like I was mentioning, this was my first car. I went and bought it, you know, did a lot of research, and then went to look at this car with my dad. He was very excited. He was probably as excited as I was actually at the time.
Right.
Unfortunately, my dad's no longer with us.
Right.
So we've talked about it. We've got that Oldsmobile 442,
Right.
which we'll see later on, and we know that was his car.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll always have that memory of him in that vehicle. But
Exactly.
you know, I like keeping this car too, because you know, like I said, we went, you know, checked it out together, test drove it. He drove this car quite a few times too. He always liked borrowing it. So yeah, it's just another memory of him. So another reason that I'll probably never sell it.
Right. So, and that's actually when we were going to film. We were originally planning on filming not with this car.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to film with your dad's car.
Yep.
Which is in the restoration process right now, but it's just not complete yet, so we weren't ready to film quite yet.
Yeah, running a little behind, but hopefully we'll get there by next year.
So you will see that car on the next season of this show, the 442. It's a very nice vehicle, and ironically, somebody that worked on the vehicle at some point was Sebastian, who was on one of the very first episodes with the Z28 Camaro. So it's a small world. You never know who you're going to know. So mutual friends. So
everything comes full circle, right?
Absolutely. So if you watch next season, you will see that car for sure. You'll hear the story. Now, before that, there's one more thing we got to do before we wrap it up. Every single episode, there's always a hat. I got to give you the hat, man. Between the wheels, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, man. And Nick's done a lot of help. He's actually helped me a lot on this show. In terms of the content for these episodes, I want to give him a shout out. Thanks, man, for the help. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
And so here's your hat, man.
Thank you very much.
And
this is great.
We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Next time on Between the Wheels.
A lot of guys build it for top speed. I built this for how fast I can get to that speed. This engine here is just under 400 horse. This is 8 cylinders. Okay, it's 306 cubic inches. Getting into a plane and the liftoff, I love that feeling.
So what drives you with this car?
Just the fun of having it. And this.